So yes guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Movement6, and before we get into the video, as a habit, I really want to thank you all for the subs this week, and especially for all the reactions, feedback and discussions I had with some of you guys. Really means a lot to me, and if you haven't subbed yet, please do so and put on the notification, of course. Now we've got the formalities out of the way. I do want to have a few disclaimers on this subjects, because this is a difficult topic, guys. It's a difficult one. The first topic I want to, or the first disclaimer I want to put out is, I want to move away as far as possible from politics in general. Really. It's a toxic environment where there is a huge lack of respect across the board. And I think gaming should unite. And it does. That's the reason I love gaming, because you meet so much people online. I even have people that I met online turning into friends. So that's the sole notion of gaming in general. Of course, games can provoke. They can, and they should. And sometimes it's good, and sometimes it doesn't. And we can have a discussion on that. And as long as the discussion is fair and with the utmost of respect for everyone, then there is no problem, right? But overall, especially on this channel, I want to move away from politics as far away as possible. The second disclaimer is, I'm not telling anyone what to do. This is just providing context and some insights, and yes, my opinion as well. But if a sovereign country wants to make choices, it should also take the responsibility for those choices. But now, and in this case, people are being addressed globally for a domestic problem. But this is not a new topic, you know. Every time we see, especially in the US, mass shootings, then there are a few people that stand up and blame video games. As you can see here in The Verge, it's an article from August 5th, made by Megan Farokmanesh, I hope I pronounced it right, which is a great article. And I took some time to digest this and get my head around this, because we as gamers, you, me, people watching this, or maybe you will never spot this video, but you're addressed. You're all addressed as being a hazard to the environment, and you're using a tool that can cause mass destruction, mass shootings. But in all fairness, the US has a domestic problem, and it's addressing it globally, which is of course a bit strange, right? And it's not a new topic, because it's a talking point that's been repeated since Columbine, and which is strange, right? Because video games are being sold globally, and the US is the only one that has mass shootings. Yes, we've got war zones across the planet, but I think it's got more to do with the human race in general being a pretty violent race. And if you put guns in the hands of violent people or a violent species, then it's bound to go wrong. Luckily, we've got about maybe 90 to 99% of the people globally who are friendly, loving people. But if you put guns in the hands of those few percent of people that are complete idiots, then you can blame video games. But I think you should look at your own environment, your own country, and your own choices you've made that are leading up to mass shootings. But also, this article is not reflecting my opinion per se. It's just a good, strong starting point, and it's a good article, right? So let's get into this. Following two mass shootings in Dayton, Ohio and El Paso recently, a familiar cycle is playing out. Lawmakers and government officials offer thoughts and prayers, yet take no action to prevent further tragedies. And that's exactly what's happening here, right? If video games were to blame, then where did all the violence come from also in the US before the dawn of video games, right? It's nothing but hollow words, some thoughts, some prayers, people going to internet saying pray for El Paso or Ohio or Dayton or whatever, but nobody is really addressing the issue here. So House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy told Fox and Friends that video games dehumanize individuals in a speech today. President Trump pointed out that video games especially as a root cause for mass shootings. We must stop, and this is very important, guys, we must stop the glorification of violence in our society. Fully agree with that. He said, this includes the gruesome and grisly video games that are now commonplace. It is too easy today for troubled youth to surround themselves with a culture that celebrates violence. Whoa, 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 whoa. So, we must stop or substantially reduce this, and it has to begin immediately. Okay, fine, so we've got a lot of hollow words, not saying anything, because it seems to be okay that troublesome people are being surrounded by guns. That seems to be fair and okay, which is fine, you know. If you in the US want to exercise your Second Amendment, which is this, the right to bear arms, go ahead, it's your country, you know, fine. But you're the only country that has this problem. And if you want to stop the glorification of violence in your society, let's talk about the glorification of violence brought to us in our homes globally by Hollywood. Ever since the dawn of Hollywood, we've seen violent movies, Western movies, cowboy movies and Indians. We all know how you guys got there, you know, with cowboys and Indians. We've seen mafia movies. In recent days, we've got people glorifying violence, like Quentin Tarantino. He's just openly admitted, I'm glorifying violence because it's entertaining. We've got Jason Statham, we've got Sylvester Stallone, we've got Arnold Schwarzenegger. The list goes on and on. The US is the biggest contributor to the glorification of violence globally, via Hollywood alone. So, you know, I've got serious problems with then picking out the glorification of violence in your society and then picking out us as gamers. You know, the time we're spending on gaming, we can't spend on anything else. But the time you spend with a gun, you can spend your time with a gun on anything else, right? So, well, okay, I must say that I'm completely staggered on the lack of context, the lack of looking at the choices you made as a country. And if you want to stop the glorification of violence, then look at yourself. Look at you as a country that is glorifying violence since the dawn of movies have started, right? But okay, if we want to search some context here as well, we could also say that the US, who has the biggest porn industry in the world, is glorifying the way women should be treated and looked at globally. And we could also advocate that maybe even the US is promoting rape through porn. I don't know. You've got the biggest porn industry in the world, right? There is no other country that matches the amount of content you produce, you guys, in terms of the porn industry. So, you know, don't stop then with glorification of violence with games. Make it a very broad discussion. Make it a discussion about Hollywood. Make it a discussion about your own sex industry you've got over there. Okay, well, let's go on. Research has failed to find conclusive proof. That's the underlying thought here, because that's true. There is no proof from research that shows that video games provoke, but there's more to come on that. So video games have been a scapegoat for violent acts since Columbine. Over the years, critics have pointed fingers without end. After the Virginia Tech shooting, activist Jack Thompson blamed Counter-Strike. Others obsessed over news that the Sandy Hook shooter played games like Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto just last year. Trump pointed the finger at video games following the Parkland, Florida shootings. A meeting at the White House with gaming executive proved to be bizarre, unhelpful, and unable to prevent further strategies. Sorry about that. But for decades, research, and here we go, has failed to find conclusive proof that video games do in fact lead to mass shootings. When Brown versus Entertainment Makers Association went to the Supreme Court in 2011, judges ultimately ruled that there is no definite evidence to link violent behavior to violent games. And the reason why this article is so good is it has deep links to all the relevant points they're talking about. And I really urge you guys to go to theverge.com and look for this article. I will show it. Here you go. Oh, sorry about that. Here you go. Trump and the Republicans continue to blame video games for their failure on gun control. Just search it on theverge.com and it pops up immediately. Reports have pointed to domestic violence for years as a better indicator of mass shooters. Some studies, and you can link to those studies, even argue that game releases can lead to less crime. And the reason for that is that people put their frustrations in that video game rather than walking around with that frustration, leading ultimately to a complete explosion on the street, right? In the United States, there have been more shootings in 2019 than days in the year. It's a uniquely American problem with a death count that pales in comparison to other countries. Focusing attention on game as a source is once again leaving room to ignore the real issue that leads to mass shooting: radicalization, mental health, and a lack of gun control. And I must say, I am fully on board on these three topics. There is an overall radicalization in the world, full stop, and that's why I said I want to move away from politics as much as possible. There is not a sensible, there is not a topic that we can discuss sensibly, right, with each other. Immediately people, especially Twitter, is a pool of poison in those kind of things. But also the mental health of people. We've got a pretty good healthcare system in the Netherlands, full stop. Yes, it's a bit expensive in terms of the taxes we pay for that, but overall it's highly accessible. Everybody can help, everybody is insured, and that's not the case in the US. And that's their own choice, right? If you think that you've got a very fantastic healthcare situation, and there are a lot of people who want to have, the government not to interfere with their choices in healthcare, that's fine, that's cool. But I do think that you can rather have the debate on these kind of things and your lack of gun control. We don't have guns in the Netherlands. You can't own them, you can't buy them. And there are a few instances you can, but it's a painstaking process. And in 99.99999% you will get a no. It's not accessible for ordinary civilians like me. And that's almost across the globe. Even Russia don't have these kind of problems, right? So I must say, and this is one of the most powerful sentences of this article, I must say it's a bit awkward that we get this as an ad for this one. I'm reporting this ad. Not interested. It's a distraction. Here you go, guys. It's a distraction, a deadly one that will cost more lives when the next shooting happens. And that's hitting the nail on the head, Blaming video games there is no underlying scientific report confirming it. That's one. Two, there have been multiple reports written on this from a scientific point of view that says there is no relationship between the two. Three, there are indications that it even prevents mass shooting because people can bring their frustration to. That's the underlying thought of the report. Four, it's completely shying away from discussing things like mental health problems, radicalization, how people can go from state A to B, so from a normal state to a radicalized state, and overall the easiness of people finding their way to guns in your country. And I've heard someone say not so long ago, which I had the discussion on gun control and the Second Amendment, because from a European standpoint we can't understand it. You guys can, because it's in your culture. But he said, yeah, it's not guns that kill people, the people behind the guns are killing people. And that's a very fine sentence, and I think that lawyers would really appreciate these kind of sentences. But overall, it's not an advocate for widening your gun, widening the Second Amendment and your access to guns, but rather of controlling it and increase gun control, because it seems that you have a lot of people behind a gun that are completely nutcases. So if you want to rule out the possibility of people using that gun and being that guy behind a gun, then just increase gun control. That will be my discussion and my humble opinion on that. It's not that I say that you should, because if you as a country via democratic processes rule that you find the Second Amendment so important and that you want to have access to those guns, it's your country. But inevitably you will not solve anything. On the other side, then just take the step. Forbid video games in your country. Just do it. Because otherwise, dear Mr. Republic, how's this guy, Kevin McCarthy, and President Trump, you can rule it easily, right? I think that Trump has the power to make a presidential rule and then forbid video games to be sold nationwide, and then see what happens. See what happens. If that really solves your problem, then I will be the first one to make a video out of it. I think your problem will even increase. I think it will not go down, because you still have people behind a gun that is easily accessible, the gun, and who can fire the gun. You will not solve the problem. And the problem is people having access to guns, and those people are complete nutcases. I'm not saying that everyone is a nutcase that owns a gun. Absolutely not. I think the vast majority of people that own a gun are pretty sensible and decent people who can who are not in any way willing or had the idea of killing people. Absolutely not. But from 100 people, there is only one idiot needed to shoot kids at a school. So instead of pointing fingers in the wrong direction and eventually create a distraction, which is going to be a deadly one, focus it on the real problem, and do not point fingers worldwide to people who are enjoying this form as entertainment, who are enjoying the games, who are meeting people online, and who are well, gaining new friends, because that is what gaming is all about, guys. Of course, I'm really interested in what your opinion is on this. You know, do you think video games play a vital role in mass shootings or violence across the board, or not? Of course, my call is on you guys to have sensible discussions on it. Don't point fingers. Don't be disrespectful to people. We gamers should have the ultimate respect for every guy, every woman we meet online, every person, you know. That's what gaming all about. So if you want to have something on this topic, leave a like, leave a comment, really a comment. I'm really keen on understanding what your issue is and what your take is on this issue. But for now, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, put on the notifications. I will be back in the next few days with some more insights on some release dates on The Last of Us, some more Modern Warfare content, and especially Rainbow Six Siege with the new season coming up, guys. So stay tuned, and we've got more opinions on this channel as well. Movement 6 out, back to the madness.